Hi boys and girls, this is lesson 3.6, all about comparing fractions. Get that written in your notebook with the date and then come on back. So the first question is this for you. Mrs. Kelly ran 4/5 of a mile. Mr. Kelly ran 3/5 of a mile. Who ran further? Or did we run the same distance? Could you write a number model using less than, greater than, or equals to compare the distances? And then jot down how you came about that answer, like evidence for it, okay? And then when you're done, come on back. Well, here's what we would say. We would say that Mrs. Kelly ran more because 4/5 is greater than 3/5. And I could have done that a few different ways. So here's some of the possible answers that you could have used to justify yours. You could have said, well, both fractions have a denominator of 5, so they're both fifths, right? And 4 of the 5 parts is more than 3 of the 5 parts. Totally true. 4/5 of a mile, another way you could have come up with it, is just 1 part away from a whole mile. 3/5 is 2 parts away, so 4/5 is larger. That'd be true as well. I could have also used fraction circles or a number line, and either way I would have been able to show that 4/5 is greater than 3/5. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So there's the picture representation for you to see that there's 4 of them here, 3 of them here, still out of fifths, so this one is more, and where they line up on the number line, right on. Here's another question for you. Notice that the whole is a large sandwich. At the school picnic, Mary saw a group of 3 friends getting ready to share a large sandwich. 2 other friends were sharing another sandwich of the same size. Both groups invited Mary to join them. Which group should she join if she wants to get the most to eat? Write a number model using less than, greater than, or equal to show your answer, and, again, evidence. How did you get there? What method did you use? When you have that, come on back. Well, hopefully you could see this. She should choose the group of 2 friends. And the number model that I would use to show that would be this. It would be 1/4 if she chose the group of 3 because she would be the 4th friend sharing it. So she would get 1 out of the 4 pieces. Versus if she joins the group of 2, then she would be the 3rd person and she would get 1 out of the 3 parts that the sandwich would be divided into. 3 parts is definitely their bigger parts than 4ths, so if she wants more to eat, she's got to go with the group of 2. And here's some ways you could have explained that. You could have said the more people sharing, the smaller each share would be. Totally true, that's what we were just talking about. And she wants to eat with the fewer people. Both fractions, another way, both fractions have a numerator of 1, but they have different denominators. So one sandwich divided into 4 pieces, others into third. Thirds are bigger than fourths, 1/3 is greater than 1/4. And here's how I could represent it this way or this way. I know, beautiful drawing. Alright, so you had to know that the sandwiches were the same size in that last problem, right? And you had to know the number of people sharing the sandwiches. If my sandwiches would have been different sizes, if we hadn't said what size they were, that would have made that problem impossible to solve with just that information, right? Okay, so today we're going to compare 2 fractions with different numerators and different denominators within number stories, and we're going to compare them by creating common denominators or numerators, or by comparing to each to the benchmark fraction with each of the fractions, okay? And a benchmark fraction would be ones that you obviously know easily. Half is the biggest one. A lot of people can picture fourths pretty easily, so fourths, half, 2/4, 3/4, those would be some other good benchmarks. And then, of course, the whole of whatever size you're breaking it into. All right, let's take a look at some problems. Here's the first one. Barb and Sherry are sisters. Their parents gave each of them the same allowance. Barb spent 2/5 of her money at a football game. Sherry spent 6/10 of her money at a clothing store. Who spent less? Or did they spend the same amount? So write a comparison number model to show your answer, and then jot down some thoughts as to how you got there. When you're done, come on back. Well, here we go. Could have done a lot of things here. So hopefully you would be able to see that Barb spent less. 2/5 is less than 6/10. Here's some different ways you might have solved it. Whatever way you solved it, you wouldn't need to write your notes again, but on the other ways that I'm solving right here, you're going to want to write these down because they might come in handy for you on a different problem. Okay, so here's the first one. So by using equivalent fractions to change fractions with different denominators to ones with the same denominator, I could definitely compare. That would make it easier. That's called finding a common denominator. So 2/5, I know fifths and tenths are definitely easily relatable for me, right? They're both multiples of 5. So I know if I do 5 times 2, I can get to 10. And I know whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So I could take 2/5 times 2 over 2, which is going to be equal to 4/10. Then I can easily compare. Well, 4 of the 10 pieces is less than 6 of the 10 pieces, right? So finding a common denominator works pretty well if they're multiples of the same number, okay? Another option, I could have changed the numerators to match. That's called finding a common numerator. So I'm looking at, I originally had 2/5, right? 2/5 and 6/10. So if I want my 2 to become a 6, I know if I do multiples of 2, 2, 4, 6, so I know it's possible, right? I would have to multiply 2 times 3 to get to the 6. Whatever I do to the top, I have to do to the bottom of my fraction. So then 5 times 3, and that's going to equal 15. So 6/15, these parts are going to be much smaller than the tenths, right? So I know if I have the same numerator, the fraction with the smaller parts is going to be less than the one with the bigger parts. So this has more parts, which means they're all smaller, right? And this has bigger parts. Okay, so this is less than. Another way I could have done it was by comparing both of the fractions to a benchmark, and I'm going to do the benchmark of a half. Remember, we used fraction circles to compare fractions to a half, and we used number lines to compare equal size parts too. So this should seem somewhat familiar to you from previous lessons. So here's the half. I know 2/5 is going to fall on this side of it because I know that half of 5 is 2 1/2. So this is going to be less. And I know half of 10 is 5, so 6 is more. So if this one's on this side of the half and this one's on this side, I know this is less than this, right? Here's a visual representation of that as well. Here's if I'm using my fraction circles, and here's if I'm doing it on a number line. See where this lines up to this one? Less than this, right? Okay, there we go. Here's another problem for you. Scott and Terry are reading their book club book. Scott read 4/6 of it, and Terry read 5/12. Who has read more, or have they read the same amount? Go ahead again, write a comparison number model to show your answer, and then write down how you solved it, and we will compare that to what I've got. And here we go. So hopefully you'd be able to tell me that Scott read more because 4/6 is greater than 5/12. Here's some of the ways I might have solved it. I might have found that common denominator. I know that 6ths and 12ths are multiples. 12 is a multiple of 6. So I could do 6 times 2 to get myself there. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So 4 times 2 is 8. So now I'm comparing 8/12 to 5/12. Well, there's 8 of the parts, which is going to be more than 5 of the parts, right? So that's definitely something I could do. Another option for this problem that I think would be pretty easy would be to compare to a benchmark fraction. 4/6 is greater than a half. I know this because I know 3/6 is equal to a half, and 4/6 is more than 3/6. Therefore, 4/6 is greater than a half. Same concept with 5/12, however, the other way. 5/12 is less than a half. I know this because 6/12 is 1/2, and 5/12 is less than 6/12. So 5/12 is less than a half. Now I need to also add this bottom line. So if 5/12 is less than a half and 4/6 is greater than a half, I know 4/6 is greater than 5/12. Here's a visual representation of that for you. The pieces, if I was using my fraction circles, and how it would stack up on a number line. See how they compare? That's where that would be versus this. All right. Okay, you're going to now do some of these same problems in your math journal on page 83. So give these problems a try. When you think you have them, come on back. And here's the answers. So take a look and see what you came up with. Your answers wouldn't definitely have to match mine because this is one of the methods that you could have used. If you used a different method and still came up with this answer, that's great. If you're confused on any of these, no worries. We will talk about them in class. Once you're done checking those out and correcting yours, give the home link a try. And when you get this all done, feel free to come back here to check the answers or do it on the other sheet on our website. All right. And there are the answers to that home link. That would be out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm saying that's out of 7. So go ahead and write your fraction and then your percent from that. Top divided by bottom equals percent, right? All right. Have a great one.